Welcome to Impraise. Today we're going to take a look at everything you need to know about reviews in Impraise. Watch this video first to get a broad understanding of reviews, and then check out our videos on specific types of reviews for more details. There are 5 different types of reviews in Impraise. It's important to select the type that makes the most sense for the review you're creating. It's optional to add a self-assessment to any review type except for the Pulse survey. And with a self-assessment, feedback recipients will also be asked to complete the same questions about themselves. In a peer review, participants will be asked to select people they would like to receive feedback from, or you can select reviewers for them. Reviewer selection is automatically enabled in a peer review. In a performance review, managers will be asked to review their direct reports. Managers will be matched to their direct reports based on the hierarchy set up in user management. In a leadership review, team members will be asked to review their managers. Team members will be matched to managers based on the hierarchy set up in user management. In a custom review, you can manually define who will give and receive feedback or use reviewer selection. And finally, with a Pulse survey, you can measure engagement through a quick survey which is sent out to all employees. Results are shared with observers, and managers will receive a collated report of their direct reports responses. Now let's take a look at the review process. The basic review process is as follows. First, email invites are sent out at the start date and time to all participants. Secondly, feedback is submitted during the review period. And finally, review reports are created and shared automatically at the end date and time. When setting up the review, you select who you want to share the reports with and the privacy setting of the reports. Feedback will not be visible until the reports are shared. In a review where reviewer selection is enabled, you have 2 additional phases before the review starts. In reviewer selection, users are invited to select the people that they would like to receive feedback from. In manager approval, managers can add, approve, or decline reviewer selections for their direct reports. This phase is optional. Now let's look at the steps to set up a review. There are 5 basic steps to set up a review. First, select who will receive feedback, the recipients, and who will give feedback, the reviewers. Then, select the questions that will be asked in the review. Next, set the dates and times for the review as well as for notifications and reminders. After that, give your review a title and create instructions that will be shared with participants. Lastly, you would decide how to share review reports as well as whether a feedback giver's name will be shown or not. During each step, you can press Save to save your progress or Save and Continue to go on to the next step. Let's look at each of these steps in more detail. When selecting review participants, you will first add recipients, the person receiving the feedback, and then the reviewers, the person giving the feedback. We recommend making sure your user management is up to date before creating a review. This ensures that the correct users are in the system and that your hierarchy is correct. Select Add Participants to open the selector pop-up. You can either select participants manually or with a CSV upload. If you want to do the latter, check out our video which will take you through these steps. Select the feedback recipients by checking the box adjacent to their name. View users alphabetically, by team, or by hierarchy. Search for an individual name, or add all users by checking the Select All box. Once you are done with your selection, click Add. After adding feedback recipients, you can add the reviewers. You can do this manually by clicking Suggest Reviewers. You can search for reviewers by name or pull up a list of all users by clicking on the people icon on the right-hand side of the search bar. External reviewers can be added by typing in their email address to the search bar and selecting them. This option will only be available if external reviewers has been enabled in your organization. Certain review types will automatically select the correct reviewer once you've saved your progress. This is based on the hierarchy set in user management. Adding a reviewer selection phase allows recipients to select the reviewers that they would like to receive feedback from. Reviewer selection can be added to any type of review except for the Pulse survey. To edit reviewer selection, select Edit and toggle the reviewer selection on or off in the pop-up window. When reviewer selection is enabled, you have the option to edit 3 different settings. You can set a recommended number of reviewers for each person to select. Please keep in mind that this number includes any reviewers that you have manually pre-selected. Users will not be blocked from selecting more reviewers, but they will receive a warning that they have passed the recommended number. Enabling users to edit pre-selected reviewers means that they can delete a reviewer that has already been selected for them. And finally, when manager approval is enabled, managers will be able to add, approve, or decline reviewer selections for their direct reports. We suggest using this option as it allows managers to catch anyone who has not selected peer reviewers and who would not receive feedback otherwise. If a manager doesn't complete the approval step, the review will begin with the direct reports selected reviewers. When adding topics or questions, you can either create a custom question or select one from your topics library. In reviews that include a self-assessment, you also have the option to write a self-assessment alternative. This allows those reviewing themselves to have the question or topic positioned in an inward perspective. Once your questions are set, you can select from 3 different answer types. You can select from rating scale, multiple choice, or open-ended answers. The rating scale is based on your organization's settings. Multiple choice answers must have at least 2 options. Open-ended answers are an open text field. You can ask for a comment on both rating scale and multiple choice answers. Doing so will allow the reviewer to add additional context to their rating, which makes the feedback more effective for the receiver. You have the option to mark specific questions as required. Doing so means that participants must complete the question before submitting their review. If a rating scale or multiple choice question is asking for a comment, only the rating is required. Once your questions are finalized, you can adjust the order by clicking on the 6 dots on the left side of the question and dragging the question to the place that you would like. In this step, you will select the dates and times for the review as well as for notifications and reminders. Add the start and end dates and time for each phase. As you add your dates, you will see the timeline for the review at the top of the page. We recommend scheduling at least 1 week for feedback exchange. Review reports will be shared in line with your reporting settings once the review is over. It's not recommended to end a review on a Friday if you will be sharing reports. This is because if people receive unexpected feedback, they're going to need to wait the entire weekend before discussing it with one of their peers or manager. Once you're done scheduling your review, check the notifications and reminders. These are automatically set out at the scheduled times to participants who have not completed the review. You can deselect notifications and reminders or adjust your own review schedule to make sure that reminders don't go out over the weekend or early in the morning. In this step, you will give your review a title and create instructions that will be shared with the participants. The title of the review will be the title of the feedback report, so make sure to create a title that is specific and use keywords for ease of finding later. For example, 2020 Quarter 2 Sales Performance Check-in. If you've enabled reviewer selection, these instructions will be included in the first email inviting people to select their peer reviewers. Add instructions here to guide people in selecting the correct reviewers. The review instructions will be included in the invitation email sent out to all review participants. Give as much information here as possible to help participants be successful in completing their review. A few things to include are an explanation of the rating scale, guidance on how to give feedback, information about the follow-up after the review, and details on who will be able to see the feedback. Lastly, you'll decide how to share review reports as well as whether a feedback giver's name will be shown or not. Review reports are shared at the deadline. Feedback and the review reports will not be available before then. You can select to share the review report with the feedback recipient and/or the feedback recipient's manager. This can be done anonymously, where the feedback does not show who gave the feedback, or non-anonymously, where the feedback shows who gave the feedback. You can also add observers to a review. Observers will have access to review analytics and to all review reports either anonymously or non-anonymously. We recommend always adding your HR admin account to an observer on every review. This account will be your review filing cabinet and will ensure that your HR team will always have access to review reports no matter the change in staffing at your company. On the summary page, you'll see an overview of the review that you've set up. There are a couple things to check before you schedule your review. In the participants phase, you can always add more participants once the review has started, but you cannot remove participants. Make sure to double check that everyone is on there that should be. In the questions stage, you cannot change the questions or answer types once the review has started. Make sure to check that all your questions are there and that you've selected the correct answer types. In the reporting phase, you cannot change the reporting settings once the review has started. So make sure that you've at least shared the report with the feedback recipient or the feedback recipient's manager, and that you've added an observer. In the schedule phase, you can update the schedule once the review has started, as long as the end date has not passed. However, it's always a good idea to double check the times and dates of your schedule before the review begins. And in the communication stage, you can always update the communication once the review has started. Keep in mind that some people may have already looked at the communication and they will not receive a notification. Once you're satisfied with your review, select the green Schedule Review button to set it in motion. You can always unschedule your review before it officially begins if you have any other changes to make. And if you're not sure, your Customer Success Manager is always happy to double-check your review before it starts. Please feel free to reach out. Now that your review has started, check out our next video on review progress, analytics, and reports to learn more.